Foods linked to cancer. Some foods have been linked to cancer, and yet most people have no idea. The number one food we are talking about is meat, especially red meat and processed meat. According to the World Health Organization and International Agency for Research on Cancer, the primary food group classified as a definitive cause of cancer is processed meat, while red meat is classified as a probable cause of cancer. Next is foods with aflatoxin are toxic. They are carcinogenic compounds produced by Aspergillus fungi, commonly contaminating crops stored in warm, humid conditions. High-risk foods include corn, peanuts, other tree nuts like pistachios, almonds, walnuts, Brazil nuts, spices like chilli, turmeric, dried fruit, and oilseeds. They can also affect dairy and meat if animals eat contaminated feed. Main foods affected by aflatoxin include cereals and grains, maize or corn, rice, sorghum, wheat, millet. Nuts and oilseeds affected are peanuts and ground peanuts, pistachios, almonds, walnuts, Brazil nuts, hazelnuts, cottonseed. Spices include chili powder, black pepper, coriander, ginger, turmeric. Dried fruits include dates, prunes, apricots, and figs. Other products include peanut butter, cooking oil, cocoa beans, cassava, and occasionally milk cheese from animals fed contaminated feed. Store nuts and grains in dry, cool places to avoid mold growth. Avoid eating foods that look moldy, discolored, or shriveled. While some exposure is unavoidable, keeping intake as low as possible is advised due to cancer risks. Aflatoxin is classified by the International Agency for Research on Cancer, the IARC, as a Group 1 human carcinogen, meaning we have sufficient evidence to say it can cause cancer. The risk is especially clear for liver and gallbladder cancer. And people who already have a liver condition like hepatitis are even more prone. Worldwide, between 5 and 28% of all liver cancers can be attributed to aflatoxin exposure. Now, the risk varies enormously depending on where you live. In regulated markets like the United States, and most other countries, actually tests for aflatoxin in most foods. So, if you are buying major brands and avoiding foods that look off, moldy, discolored, or shriveled as recommended by the National Cancer Institute, then contamination is very unlikely. It is much more common in developing countries. Other foods with similar issues of aflatoxin contamination include corn and some spices. Okay, what about vegetables? Number 3 is vegetables. Vegetables themselves are not a cause of cancer. In fact, eating a wide variety of vegetables is widely proven to reduce the risk of many cancers due to their high fiber, vitamin, and antioxidant content. However, some research suggests potential risks from pesticide residues or specific preparation methods. Scientific evidence overwhelmingly supports vegetables as protective against cancer, right? Eating a large quantity of pickled vegetables could be bad. Then the signal flips. Research meta-analyses have found a 15% higher risk of stomach cancer for every 40 grams a day of pickled vegetables. In all likelihood, this is because of the high salt content in pickles, because we see a similar relationship between a diet high in salt and stomach cancer. So, avoid pickled foods, whether they are vegetables or fruits. Number 4 is fish. Most people think of it as a healthier food, but it depends on how it is prepared and sold. Particularly, Cantonese-style salted fish are strongly linked to increased risks of nasopharyngeal cancer due to high nitrosamine content. Additionally, high consumption of fish, including tuna, may be linked to a 22% higher risk of melanoma, and charring fish at high temperatures can create carcinogenic compounds. Salted fish like codfish, sold in some markets, is linked to a higher risk of nasopharyngeal cancer as well. Number 5 is fermented foods. They have even seen this link with miso, which is a soup. It is a fermented food. Everything would seem to indicate it is a healthy food, but it has a lot of salt. So you may want to make your own miso, and avoid most commercial products. A lot of these links are seen especially in Asian populations because that is where a lot of these foods are eaten more often. The way this works is excess salt damages the stomach lining over time, making it more vulnerable to H. pylori, a bacteria we have in our stomach. Obviously, the amount matters as always. So for occasional intake, we see low or even no risk, and then the risk gradually rises with frequency of intake. Number 6 is alcohol. How many people avoid heavy alcohol and have some wine instead? Especially red wine. It is seen as a sophisticated drink. It's light. It even has a health halo for some people. But the problem is the alcohol itself. Alcohol is a carcinogen. And so even though red wine has a lower alcohol content than some forms of liquor, like scotch, for example, at the end of the day, it is the overall amount and the individual susceptibility that matters. Recent studies report essentially a linear relationship between alcohol intake and risk of cancer. So for occasional intake, we see low risk, especially if you do not have a lot of genetic susceptibility. And then as the intake goes up, risk goes up. What if we skip the alcohol altogether and drink something healthier like a cup of coffee? Coffee is indeed much healthier. In fact, most of the data for coffee shows lower risks of cancer, especially liver and endometrial cancer. Number 7. In some circumstances, hot drinks like coffee, tea, and other hot drinks can raise the risk of cancer, specifically oral and throat cancer. And that is if we drink it very hot, over 65 degrees centigrade. Even tea, which no one suspects is linked to cancer, has shown this exact same relationship when it is drunk very hot, which some people do. So it is less about the composition of the drink itself in this case, and more about the temperature of the drink that can damage the lining of the mouth and throat and lead to cancer formation in the long run. Here are a couple of foods where the risk is less well established in research, but there is a plausible relationship and caution is still recommended. Number 8 is acrylamide. Primarily found in fried, baked, roasted, or toasted foods like French fries, potato chips, crackers, cookies, cereals, and coffee. This pertains to starchy foods that are cooked at very high temperatures like French fries or burnt toast. So you want to avoid deep frying as a staple of your diet, especially industrial frying, and also anything that is overcooked or burnt. Meats generally seen as healthier like poultry or fish can also cause problems if they are cooked at very high temperatures to the point of charring. Number 9. Surveys have shown that 80% of people are not aware of this link between over-grilled charred meats and cancer. Charring animal flesh causes the protein inside to react with other components, creating carcinogens like heterocyclic amines. When the fat and juices from the meat drip down onto the flames, smoke rises and causes another carcinogen, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, to deposit on the surface of the food. So, here are some tips to reduce the risk. Marinating meats before grilling can powerfully reduce carcinogen formation because of the antioxidants present in herbs and spices in the marinade. Rosemary, garlic, and turmeric are especially potent. Avoid marinades with a lot of added sugar, which can make things worse. Favor marinades with citrus or vinegar. The low acidity in those marinades also helps prevent formation of carcinogens. Another useful trick is to pre-cook large cuts of meat on the stove or in the oven and then finish them on the grill. This reduces the exposure time to the flames and minimizes the formation of carcinogens. Cooking at lower temperatures is another good strategy. Also choose leaner cuts or trim visible fat before grilling. This can reduce flare-ups, smoke, and charring. And as a last resort, you can cut off any charred bits that make it onto your plate. Consume a diet rich in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and beans. Limit intake of red meats, processed meats, bacon, hot dogs, and high-sugar, saturated fat foods. Maintain a healthy body weight, as obesity is linked to an increased risk of several cancers. B. Engage in regular exercise, aiming for at least 30 minutes of moderate intensity activity daily to reduce the risk of breast and colon cancers. Protect skin from midday sun to reduce ultraviolet radiation by using sunscreen, wearing protective clothing, and avoiding tanning beds. And reduce alcohol consumption, as it is linked to increased risks of breast, liver, lung, and colorectal cancers. Protect against cancer-causing viruses, such as hepatitis B and HPV or human papillomavirus. Participate in regular recommended screenings for breast, bowel, cervical, and lung cancers to catch abnormalities early. Regularly observe urine and stools for signs of blood when you go to toilet. Reduce environmental exposure. Test homes for asbestos and an invisible gas called radon, which causes lung cancer, and limit exposure to toxic chemicals in the workplace and home. If you think this video is useful, click the like button and subscribe to my channel. It is a simple help to me encouraged to make more videos. Thanks. See you in the next video.